are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to People Making Money. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and I'm here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about job hunting, starting and building a business, and building wealth, all the financial aspects of our lives. And today, well, for those of you who watch the show, you know that I am a serial business owner, a serial entrepreneur. I've started a number of businesses over the years, and since 1986, the only person the only time I've ever been an employee is when I was a chaplain in the United States Navy. So other than that, I've worked for myself, all the rest of the time. And even when I was still a reservist in the Navy, my professional activities were all self-employed. So, look, I understand having a business isn't for everybody, but I think that going forward, as we deal with the challenges of an ever-changing business environment, or economic environment, I should say, face the challenges of it seems like ever more rapidly changing technology. So I was a good friend of mine is in town this week. We had dinner on Monday evening, and we were sort of after dinner, sort of sitting back and reminiscing about the changes we've lived through. He's about 10 years younger than me, little more than that. So when I started in business, okay, you had the telephone, landline telephone. Okay, now there were touch tone phones, but when I was born, touch tone phones hadn't been invented yet. Only the rotary dial phones. So touch tone phones came in, I think, when I was like a preteen or early teenager. But when I started my first company, there were only there were only telephones, landline phones, and actually, I think there were, and around that time, cordless phones came in, right? Where you could hold the receiver, but it didn't have to be attached to the thing, to the base. And then after a few years, the fax machine came along, as did and the personal computer was just coming around when I started my first company in 1986. I remember a friend of mine taking me to UCLA because he could get a teacher discount on one of the original Mac computers. It was about this square and about this tall. About this tall. You can't see it on the screen. And that was my first computer. It had the floppy disk drive where you put the little square floppy disks in it, and that was my first personal computer. I think it had a whopping like 5 kilobytes of memory, or some crazy small number by today's standards, right? So the personal computer was just starting to be used. It was not ubiquitous at all. And then fax machines, and then cellular phone. Oh, but then pagers came in, right? Where you had this little thing attached to your belt, and if somebody needed to get a hold of you in emergency, they would dial the pager number. It would beep 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 beep, or it would vibrate. You'd feel it, and then you could take it off, and you'd see the number, and you'd know to call that number back. And so you went to a payphone, which still existed in those days, right? And you returned the call. Originally, those were only for doctors, but eventually they spread through all businesses. And then after pagers, I never had a BlackBerry for whatever reason, but mobile phones came in, cellular phones came in. Originally, they were huge. It was like a briefcase about this big and about this tall. And then they got the brick phone, which was about kind of this big by about this thick. And then, of course, in 2007, right, Apple brought out the smartphone, and now we're looking at, and the time to integrate these into the business environment has become ever quicker. So the time it took to integrate from uh, for cell phones was maybe 5 to 10 years before they became pretty ubiquitous in business. I think for smartphones, maybe a couple of years. I think at the most, maybe 3 years, something like that. And now we're faced with the integration of artificial intelligence, right? Which it'll be interesting to see how quickly that gets integrated, but it's happening at a very rapid rate. And so I think one of the ways that we can deal with the rapid changes in technology is to have our own business where we make the decisions about what the business is going to do, how we're going to spend our business and professional time, and we can make the changes, the shifts that need to be made in order to keep our professional life, our business life viable, right? As opposed to working for an organization that, things may change and one day we may get a pink slip because, they don't need us anymore. So especially for so-called knowledge workers, which is where there's been the most job growth here in the United States over the last probably 20 years. So a lot of those jobs are likely to go away. So my friend who's in town this week, he's a data scientist, although he actually really is a software engineer. That's the work he's actually doing. And he was explaining to me how recently he started using a new AI called Claude. Interestingly, he was the second person to tell me about Claude in a week, and how efficient Claude is in helping him code software. And he even said that he could see very soon a time when basically Claude wouldn't need him to he wouldn't be needed to prompt Claude to write the software that he was writing. So, and this is someone who works at a very, very high sophisticated level of software engineering. So if someone like that is thinking that his knowledge work job, it could potentially be replaced in the near term by AI. What about the rest of us who work in knowledge based businesses, whether it's processing insurance claims or whatever else, wherever else information needs to be uh, um, processed, right? It appears that a lot of that may very well go away, and or the number of people who are needed to do that work could shrink dramatically. So look, going forward, for me, and this is why I've always been self-employed or had my own businesses. It's because at least that way I rise or fall. I make my own decisions and I rise or fall on them, and I'm not at the mercy, if you will, of another business owner or a supervisor or whatever. So, food for thought. And let me add that if you're working for a company right now that's not your own, so that doesn't mean that you need to quit and start your own business and take that kind of risk. But you can start a so-called side gig, and perhaps that can grow into a business that you can join full time. So you can make that transition. Now, if you're young, maybe just you're graduating from college, it's already May. Isn't that mind blowing? The year is over a third gone already. But maybe you're graduating college next month, or maybe you've been out of college for a year thereabouts. You're not really sure what to do. There's lots of opportunity to start your own business and really set yourself up for the future with a lot of independence and the ability to build a life based on your terms rather than based on the dictates of the company for which you work. So I just wanted to, I haven't shared that perspective, I think, in quite a while on this show, but I will say that I am extremely bullish on people having their own businesses, even if it's not their full time, uh, you know, that which supports them full time. It is enormously rewarding, even beyond the financial aspects of it. So the opportunity for personal growth is much greater when you own your own business, in my experience. The opportunity to work with the people that you really want to work with is there when you own your own business, because you get to choose your colleagues. So, again, it's your option. Whereas when you work for another company, unless you're at the point where you're the hiring manager, you're not really going to get to choose with whom you work, number one. And even when you're the hiring manager, there's still going to be constraints on you from above. So you may not be able to choose the person you'd most like to work with. So these are the kinds of freedoms that having your own business gives you. Freedom of schedule, certainly. Now, you won't necessarily work less or have more free time. That won't necessarily be the case. What you will have is much greater flexibility, because there'll be nobody there saying, no, you can't take the afternoon off to go watch your child play soccer. I was going to say, football. That flexibility is a wonderful thing. I always appreciated having it. It's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have my own business, because I wanted to be able to have the freedom to take care of my family as and when I needed to, without having to, check in. So uh, these are the kinds of things that I encourage you to think about. Now, one last one, and I think this is one of the biggest misnomers. So I think most people have the idea that if I start my own business, in order for it to be successful, inevitably I'm going to make more money than I would have made as an employee. That's not necessarily the case. And in fact, I think most small business owners aren't necessarily making more money than they would have if they were working for another company. But the trade-offs of what you get in terms of freedom of schedule, opportunities for personal growth, being able to work with the people with whom you want to work, all of those are very valuable. And I think, especially from what I've read about younger people, I think younger people really value those aspects of life much more so than my generation did. So in my generation, the ideal was still graduate from high school, go to college, get a job, work. When I graduated from college, the expectation was still you're going to work at that job for 30 or 40 years, you're going to retire, and that's because that's how it was without the college for my parents' generation. But that whole system fell apart during my lifetime. The idea of working for the same company for 30 or 40 years and retiring, that's a non-starter these days. There's very, very, very few private sector companies for which you'll work and for decades and end up and getting, and especially end up getting a defined benefit pension. Right, your defined contribution pensions are far and away the norm in the private sector. So these are the kinds of things that I encourage you to think about, to talk with your friends and family members about, and maybe figure out how you can start your own business, even if it's, like I said, even if it's a side gig initially. So the the other person I mentioned, that two people had talked to me about Claude in the last week. One was my friend who's in town. The other is a Navy colleague of mine who's getting ready to retire soon. And he was looking at a business opportunity, and he got in touch with me. We've over the years talked about various business opportunities that he's looked at. And he uses Claude in his work for the United States Navy. He's a supply corps officer. So, and he was just rapturous about Claude. So I downloaded Claude yesterday, and I'm going to start playing with it and see what it is that people think is so amazing about it. I've been using Chat GPT now ever more regularly and for more and more things over the last probably 6 months. But really embedded ever more into my work, especially what I do on these shows. So it's a tremendous help in writing social media posts, in writing titles for the various shows that I do, and also for helping me organize my ideas and my notes. So, and in the case of today's show, I posed a number of questions to ChatGPT that I wanted it to use to research and determine what were the 5 best startup cities, and it did so. And then I asked it some refining questions, and it adjusted things. And so what you're seeing today, or what I'm presenting today, is they're my picks, but they were researched for me by my assistant, ChatGPT, who, nothing against people, but can do the kind of research that I need much more quickly and efficiently than any human being can. Right? The only way a human being could do it as efficiently is if they were using Chat GPT themselves and then handing me the results, which I don't need someone to do that. I can do the input myself. So here we go. We're going to talk about the top 5 U.S. cities to start a business as of 2025, which is when I'm doing the show. Okay, so actually, you know what? I'm going to start with number 5. I was going to start with number 1. Let's do it the Dave Letterman way. He used to do the top 10 list, and he would start with 10 and move up to 1. So let's start with number 5. So number 5 is Nashville, Tennessee. Now, I've never been to Nashville. I know some people who have. They love it there. I have been to Tennessee. It is an extraordinarily beautiful state. The people are really wonderful. I know the first time I was in Tennessee was in Memphis. And at the time, I was saying a special prayer for someone, for a friend whose relative had died. It's called the Kaddish. And you can only do that with what's called a minyan, which is a quorum of 10 men, 13 years of age or older. And so I flew into Memphis, and I had researched in advance where there was a synagogue I could go, Baron Hirsch. And I went to the synagogue, and I'm quietly, being involved with the prayer service. And after the service was over, a man came up to me, and he said hello, and he introduced himself. And he said, I haven't seen you around here. I said, no, I'm just in town on business. He said, oh, what do you do? I said, real estate appraiser, blah, 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 blah. We chatted for a few minutes. He says, well, what are you doing for dinner? I said, I'm going to go to the grocery store and pick up some food and bring it back to my hotel. I was staying at the Peabody Hotel, with the famous ducks that march from the roof down to the fountain and back during the day. And he said, well, you got to come home and you'll have dinner with my family and me. It's like, I'm a complete stranger. So that's my impression of Tennessee. And again, the natural beauty there is really astonishing. So Nashville, what's great about Nashville as a business startup location? Well, first of all, its post-pandemic job recovery has been superb. Payrolls have surpassed pre-pandemic levels. Especially big gains in healthcare and information technology, right? So if you are thinking about a business connected to those industries, Nashville is a top place to consider. Okay, skilled workforce. 41.5% of residents hold a bachelor's degree or higher. Now, why is that important? Well, I don't think having a college degree is important per se. However, in today's world, a bachelor's degree is essentially the equivalent of what a high school diploma was when I was at a similar age. So it just shows you a certain level of academic accomplishment, not necessarily in terms of specialization, but the person was able to get through 16 years of school. Basically, that's what it means. So 41.5% is higher than the national average. Okay. And then there is a good startup support there. So Launch Tennessee at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center offers mentoring, help funding resources. So there is infrastructure there to help businesses get started. Okay, and that's why I think more businesses are moving to Tennessee. So if specifically to Nashville. Now, of course, uh, when you when you go to, or if you are considering relocating to a city, in order to have a better startup atmosphere, right? Want to look at other things besides just the business climate. So Nashville, Tennessee has a great startup climate, fifth best in the country. In terms of the climate, right? So it's subtropical. Winters are around 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and summers are near 89. Okay, so you don't get cold winters. You get nearly 47 inches of rainfall annually. So the winters are probably wet, but not probably. The winters are wet, but they're not super cold the way they would be farther north. Okay, and the summers top out at about 89. I'm sure there's humidity there. It is the southeast, right? Okay, cost of living and housing. So cost of living is a little bit below the national average. The median home price is around $450,000, which is around the median home price, the nationwide median home price. Average rent for a one bedroom is about $1,500 a month. Now, if you want more information about these kinds of factors, I encourage you to watch the next Economic Echoes, because I show you how to find median home prices, or average rents in any place in the country. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that here. I have a different show for that. Okay, or you can go back and watch one of the previous Economic Echoes. I do them every month. Okay, as important as the business climate, the climate, and the cost of living is the social and physical activity scene. So, in case you haven't heard, Nashville is the home of country music, right? It is famous for that. And so, if you are interested in a music scene, Nashville is superb, right? I think, if I'm remembering, and I'm not a big country music aficionado, but I think it's where the Grand Ole Opry is, if memory serves. So it's got live music, blues, and rhythm and blues, rock and roll. Okay, those are all in the music scene in Nashville. It also has a great deal, a great number, I should say, of parks and trails and riverside greenways. Again, it's a very lush country, as in countryside, to be in. And then finally, there's a rich nightlife, fantastic food, all with a southern twist, because again, Tennessee is part of the Southeast. Of course, it was a border state during the American Civil War, but it is part of the South, and it has that southern vibe. So number 5, Nashville, Tennessee. Number 4, Denver, Colorado. So I have been to Denver, Colorado. I have relatives there, kind of distant relatives. Denver is a fabulous city. It's very walkable. It's growing, and you know, Denver, just as a, I'm sorry, Colorado, I should say, as a state, also has a tremendous amount going for it. I think there's lot of people. I have some friends who Colorado. They currently live in Virginia. They want to leave Virginia. Their ties there now are gone, and they're looking at two possibilities: Florida and Colorado. And not to knock Florida. I'm frankly not a Florida fan. Colorado would be my choice between those two. So why is Colorado such a great startup area or startup location, or why is Denver, I should say, such a great startup location? Well, first of all, has a diverse economy. Now, Colorado historically did not. It was really oil and minerals, and it was ranching. But over the decades, in addition to energy and agriculture, uh, the other industries, technology, aerospace, healthcare, have all grown tremendously in Colorado and especially in Denver. So that diverse economy means that economically the state is much more stable than it has been historically, and there's a lot more opportunity for various types of startups. So again, if you're looking to do a startup in any of those major sectors, tech, energy, aerospace, healthcare, or agriculture, still remains a big part of Colorado, and Denver being the biggest city in Colorado, that's a place to consider. So Colorado has terrific entrepreneurial support as well. There's numerous incubators, accelerators, co-working space, and there is an entrepreneurial vibe in Denver that you can almost feel it pulsing when you're in the city. So it's a younger population there than many other cities, and that energy is the best way to describe it, is just there, and one shouldn't discount how important that is. To be among people who are building businesses is a tremendous benefit, because it's kind of like we're all rowing in the same boat, and we're all dealing with not necessarily the same challenges, and so there's a collaborative, a sense of collaboration that comes out of that. And then finally, there Colorado is renowned for its quality of life, which balances uh, urban with an outdoor lifestyle. And as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, it attracts a lot of people. People just they like anybody who wants an outdoor life but wants to be able to live in an urban setting as well. Colorado is really ideal, or Denver, I'm sorry, is really ideal for that, because you can be in the urban environment of Denver, but very quickly get to absolutely fabulous outdoor uh, locations without having to go very far. Okay, in terms of climate, so it's a semi-arid, meaning a semi-desert-like climate. Winters around 45 degrees, summers around 88. So you can see in that respect, it's got a similar temperature range to Nashville, but it receives only about 15 inches of rain per year, which is a third of what Nashville has. So that's why it's a semi-arid, right? A much drier climate. So if you don't like the rain, right, you probably don't want to go to Nashville, but Denver may be a great alternative. Now, it is called the Mile High City. Denver is over 5,000 feet above sea level, and that's where some of that aridity comes from. Okay, cost of living. So it is above the national average. Median home price is $580,000. So the national median home price, I think, is around 430, 440, in that range. Excuse me. And the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is around $1,800 a month. So you can see it's definitely more expensive than Nashville. Okay, now in terms of the social and physical activity scene, well, first of all, you have access to the Rocky Mountains, some of the finest skiing you will ever find. I know I've skied in, I believe it was Breckenridge. This is a long time ago. And the skiing in the Rockies is fantastic. So, but for any kind of hiking, backpacking, like skiing, snowboarding, all of that is available very close by to Denver. I will add too that there are last time it's been a while since I've been to Colorado, but there is also gambling, if that's your thing, in Cripple Creek and a couple of other former small mining towns that are up in the Rockies. And the casinos are small. They're fun. I mean, I'm not a gambler, so it's not my thing. But if that's something you like, so that's available in the Rocky Mountains as well. So there is in Denver a vibrant cultural scene, music, arts, food festivals, all of that is there. A lot of innovation in cuisine there, sort of mashing up of different styles and such. So if you like good food, again, Denver's a fantastic place to be. And repeating something I mentioned a few minutes ago, Denver is very popular among particularly young professionals and young professionals engaged in creative endeavors. So media and digital design, those kinds of fields. There's a big scene for that in Denver. So all of these things together make Denver the fourth best startup city in the United States. Okay, number three. Got to give it a little bit of a drum roll, right? Salt Lake City. So Utah, right? Next door to Colorado. So why is Salt Lake City number three and a great startup city? Well, first of all, uh, it's economically resilient. So it's recovered 94% of the jobs lost during the pandemic. So it's recovered. You know, other places like California, I'm not sure if we've replaced our pandemic jobs. I know our population has decreased uh, um, over the last few years. We actually lost one or two congressional seats. I don't remember. It's at least one. It may have been two, right? So California is not growing. It's not the Golden State the way it used to be, but Utah is. It's got a vibrant, and resilient economy. It also is a very business friendly uh, government there. So the Utah state government supports small businesses through proactive legislation, workforce development. Taxes are relatively low. Educational quality is a high priority for the state of Utah. So if you have children that either are already in the school system or will be soon, maybe they're very young, but they're going to be starting school soon. The schools in Utah are superb. Okay, and it has a growing population, which creates new market opportunities, and also gives you access to people with whom you can work. Okay, so those are the factors that make Salt Lake City, Utah, number three from a business standpoint. Now, climate, like Denver, Colorado, it's semi-arid, although it is cooler in the winter, approximately 30 degrees. Summers are hot. It can get up in the 90s average. Okay, so in that respect, more like Nashville, but also like Denver. Annual precipitation is pretty low, about 20 inches annually. Okay, so that's why, again, it's a semi-arid climate. All right, cost of living and housing. So slightly above the national average in terms of overall cost of living. Median home price $524,000. So again, higher than the median than the national median, but not as high as Denver. Okay, more affordable than Denver. Average rent for a one bedroom $1,400 a month. Okay, so again, more affordable than Denver, and I think part of that is it's a lower tax environment than Colorado as well. And then the social and physical activity scene. Well, like Colorado and Denver specifically, Salt Lake City, Utah is renowned for its outdoor lifestyle, hiking, skiing, biking. I've never skied in Utah. I haven't had that opportunity. I would love to someday. But the skiing there is fantastic from what I've read. And whether it's Moab National Park, which has the stark desert beauty, the Great Salt Lake. The outdoor activities are almost unparalleled. Maybe Colorado is neck and neck with Colorado. Okay. Also, there is a vibrant cultural events life there. The Mural Fest is there, music festivals. Okay. I think people tend to look at Utah and say, well, but it's a heavy Mormon population there. It must be very staid and, that kind of thing. First of all, Mormons are not staid people. I know when I was in high school, the big thing was to go to the Mormon dances, right? And no, you did not, neck with your dance partner at a Mormon dance, which was probably a good thing. But they were fun, and they were great social activities for young people. But there was music and parties and all that kind of stuff. They just weren't. They weren't wild. They were within a nice range of enjoyment without the craziness. So I wouldn't be. I would be remiss if I didn't comment on that, and that I think mistaken belief. And then finally, and this is, I think, because of the Mormon influence in Utah, it's a very, very, Salt Lake City is a very family oriented community, very strong sense of community. And that's a very powerful aspect to have, especially if you're going to be starting a business. It's good to have community support. It's good to have good friends around, to have support for your family, because starting a business is challenging. And so we need that in order to have the best chance at being successful. And so if family is particularly important to you, I don't think of all the top 5 cities, probably Salt Lake City is the best from a family and community support standpoint. Okay, so all of those make Salt Lake City, Utah, number 3. Okay, number 2, a little bit longer drum roll for number 2, right? Okay, Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay, now I have not been to Raleigh. I've been to trying to think of where I was in North Carolina. It was back in 2018. I visited North Carolina, checked into my hotel, and a storm came in, and hung out in my hotel room, and then drove back where I was staying in Virginia. But Raleigh, North Carolina. What makes Raleigh, North Carolina such a great startup city? Well, first of all, the Research Triangle, which is its proximity to Duke University, the University of North Carolina, and North Carolina State. Okay, all of that fuels innovation and provides a tremendous talent pipeline. Well, I don't like the word talent. A tremendous pipeline of well-educated, innovative people, right? I would be remiss, though, if I didn't mention that. So, since I was in grade school, this was first pointed out to me, that Duke University, if you were to put the initials of the Duke University marching band on their uniforms, it would spell out DUMB, dumb. Okay, I've always thought that was humorous for some reason, but that is not to say that people graduating from Duke are dumb. Quite to the contrary. Duke is kind of the Ivy League of the Southeast, and so all 3 of these are among the finest universities in the United States, and the people graduating from them highly educated and very innovative. Okay, high job growth in Raleigh, North Carolina, 3.8% annual job growth, which is significantly above the national average. I think I want to say double or more the national average, year after year. So there are people, not only people are coming to Raleigh, but they are finding jobs, and that's a good thing. So, you may have on your mind starting a business and your spouse is going to find a job. So the prospects are very strong in Raleigh, North Carolina for being able to do that. And then North Carolina has low operating costs, which can be a big advantage, especially for a startup. So it has the second lowest corporate tax rate in the United States. LLC filing fees are 20% below the national average. So whereas here in California, oh gosh, the fee is, I want to say it's $80 or $100. And you say, well, that's not much. Yeah, it's not. But if you're starting a business, every dollar counts. The franchise tax fee for an LLC is $800 a year in California. It's not that high in North Carolina. If memory serves, it's around $300-400 a year or something like that. So it's a much lower business cost environment in North Carolina, which makes it a very business friendly place to consider a startup. Okay, so those are some of the reasons why North Carolina is number 2 on the list. And then climate. So it's humid, subtropical. Winters average around 50 degrees. Summers around 90 degrees. Okay, you can see, by the way, that all of these startup cities, that tends to be the temperature range. Okay, cost of but it is a wet climate. So like Nashville, annual rainfall 46 inches. Okay, if you recall, Nashville was 47. So it's the southeast. The southeast is wet. It's also humid. Okay, so if you're like me, I don't particularly like humidity, which is one of the reasons I don't care for Florida. But North Carolina is also very beautiful. It is a lushly green state like Tennessee. And one of the reasons that's the case is because it has so much annual rainfall. Okay. Cost of living is below the national average. Okay. Median home price, $410,000. Okay. That's below the national median. Average rent for a one bedroom, $1,300. Okay. And if memory serves, yes. So this is the least expensive city from a cost of living standpoint of the top 5. Okay. And that can make a big difference. So if you really are committed to starting a business and being successful, living in a lower cost environment, it makes it easier to be successful. So this is something really worth considering. And then finally, like with the other cities, the social and physical activity scene. So uh, North Carolina in general has a growing arts and music scene, festivals all year round. There's, like all the other states we've talked about, there are extensive parks, trails. North Carolina also has a lot of outdoor activities, great parks and all of that. And then also, like Salt Lake City, Utah, Raleigh, North Carolina is very family friendly environment. It's got a slower pace of life. It is a southern state, so it's got that southern vibe to it, and that can be very nice for a family environment where you're not having to go all the time like you would in a city like Los Angeles. And so again, if family is very important to you, so Raleigh, North Carolina would be another great choice. So Salt Lake City and Raleigh, probably the two, not probably, the two of the 5, the two best from a family standpoint. Okay. All right. So all those things make Raleigh, North Carolina number 2 on the list. And then finally, number 1 on the list. Right. Okay. That's enough drum rolling. Austin, Texas. Could you have guessed? Okay. If you're at all familiar with the startup scene, you might have guessed that Austin would be number 1. It seems to be either number 1 or in the top 5 year after year for quite a number of years now. And part of that is because Texas itself is an enormously friendly business climate, just the state as a whole. Now, why Austin as opposed to, say, Dallas or Houston? Well, first of all, Austin is a major tech hub. It's home to companies including Tesla, Apple, and Oracle, some of the biggest technology companies in the world. Okay. The city attracts billions of dollars in venture capital, and nearly half of all VC investment in Texas goes to Austin-based companies. Okay, and there is a tremendous amount of capital going into Texas, but like I said, to have half of it going to Austin when you also have cities, you have Dallas Fort Worth, you have Houston, you have San Antonio. So there's lots of places capital could be going in Texas. Half of it's going to Austin. So that's number one. Number two, again, a highly, like with Nashville, I believe it was, it has a highly educated workforce. 38% of residents in Austin hold at least a bachelor's degree. Again, that's above the national average. Okay, there's a number of great universities there, including the University of Texas at Austin. Okay, and as I mentioned a moment ago, Texas has a very friendly business environment. So it has no corporate or personal income tax. Okay. So, very low tax environment, pro business uh, state and local governments. And the city is known for strong support, startup support networks. There's all kinds of things going on there, incubators, accelerators, all that kinds. Similar in that sense to Denver, Colorado. So, there, if you recall, this is going back a few years ago. There was a sort of a verbal fight going on between Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, because Governor Abbott was enticing California businesses to his state, and Governor Newsom took umbrage with that, as well he might. But unfortunately, Texas is winning that particular battle. California is not a business friendly climate in which to start a company. So you may be asking, why did you start a business in California then? And the answer is inertia. Okay, it's where I live. It's where my daughter lives. It's where my friends are, and so there you go. All right, so those are the things that make Austin the from a business standpoint the number one startup city. In terms of climate. So it's humid subtropical, like the South, although Texas does not consider itself part of the Southeast. Texas is Texas. I remember when I lived in Texas as a kid, I said something about Texas being part of the South, and they said, "No, we're not. We're Texans." Okay, fine with me. But the winters are very mild, averaging 60 degrees. Okay, summers are hot though, 95 degrees. So, and depending on where you are, like Houston, I don't care for Houston, frankly, it's too humid for me. Austin is nice. So is San Antonio. Dallas is also pretty nice. So, in terms of humidity, not so bad. Okay, rainfall 35 inches annually, so it's wetter than Salt Lake City and Denver, but not quite as wet as Raleigh and Nashville. Okay, all right. Cost of living, excuse me. Overall, slightly above the national average. So the median home price is right around $500,000. Again, that's above the national median home price. Okay, average one-bedroom apartment is around $1,600 a month. So you can see it is on the higher end of the range of the 5 cities we've looked at, but by no means terrible. I mean, the average one bedroom here in Los Angeles, I think, is probably over 2,000 a month, right? Just to give you an idea. That's probably similar in New York, or maybe even higher in New York. Okay, so even at $1,600 a month, that's not bad. Okay, and then the social and physical activity scene. So, of course, Austin is the home of South by Southwest, perhaps the biggest music and tech festival in the country. Okay. Film festivals, music festivals are all part of the Austin scene. Fabulous food culture, and it's also a younger city, similar to Denver. So, whereas Raleigh and Salt Lake City are more family oriented cities. Austin and Denver are more young people oriented cities. Okay, so much of the culture around Austin, notwithstanding that it is the capital of Texas, much around is oriented more toward younger people. Okay, it also has a big outdoor scene. Zilker Park, Zilker Park. Yeah, I want to make sure I got the name right. For hiking, running, biking, right? All of those kinds of outdoor activities. Okay, not as robust as Salt Lake City and Denver, but certainly if you like the outdoors and not having that available would cross the city off your list, you can keep Austin on your list. And then finally, it hosts a lot of cultural events, food festivals, Latin dancing. Texas has a Latino cultural background. Of course, at one time, Texas was part of Mexico, right? I've talked about that on my other show, Business Lessons from the Military. And so you have a very diverse cultural heritage in Texas, and that is something that really brings a lot of interest and just plain flat out fun to living in Austin. So all of those factors together make Austin, Texas, the number one startup city in the United States of America. So there you have it. I'll give them to you again. Number one, Austin. Number two, Raleigh, North Carolina. Number three, Salt Lake City. Number four, Denver, Colorado. And number five, Nashville, Tennessee. So if you are thinking of starting a business and you want to find a startup friendly environment, I urge you to consider these five cities, what they have to offer, their business environment, the climate, the cost of living, and the social and physical activity scene, and find one that works for you and your family. And there you go. You too can become a business owner. So I thank you very much for joining me, especially my live viewers. Always a treat to know you're there. And let's see, this is my last show for this week. So next week on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Trust and Estates Weekly. My guest is Shilpa Bhatt. She's an estate planning attorney based in Orange County, California. And she's going to be talking about funding your estate plan, an absolutely essential task. In fact, there's no point in having an estate plan if you're not going to fund it. Okay. On Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And on Wednesday, a week from today, will be the next edition of People Making Money. And then next week, Thursday, is my every other week show at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'll meet you at Jiggers's place. We'll have a cocktail and talk about something not related to finances and professional lives. So once again, I thank you so much for joining me. Wishing you a wonderful rest of the day and week, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. Courage at all times, my friends.